of belief. We finished the set of questions that talks about the first pillar of Iman, which is Iman billah. To believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are certain things that we have to believe in, and this is something that we mentioned throughout the weeks before. Believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is the only creator, provider, sustainer, the one that life and death is by His power subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as a result of that, He's the only one worthy of worship, which is the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the messengers to call people to this, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And it's in the nature of every human being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only creator, the only sustainer. But the shayateen, they would deviate them from the path, make them worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or use intercessors or whatever. So the messengers of Allah were sent and the books were revealed, so that it would call people to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and not to associate partners with Him, and to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. And to get to know the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we said before, it's important for us to do. This is a duty on us. Sometimes in the sessions of matters of Aqeedah, this matter is taught briefly, just from the Aqeedah point of view, from the matters of belief point of view. But to extensively talk about the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's something very important, because this is something almost in every verse of the Quran, and we have to believe in them, and we have to know the meanings of them, and we have to even act according to what these names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates. So this is something inshallah ta'ala, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us life, maybe we can do this one session after another with the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His attributes. But then the next pillar of Iman that he mentioned here is the Iman, or the belief in the angels. Iman بالملائكة. Believe in the angels, because this is one of the 6 pillars of an Iman, and it's a matter of ghaib, matter of unseen to us. So in matters of unseen, we need to refer to the Quran and to the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The first question, he says, ما الدليل على الإيمان بالملائكة من الكتاب والسنة? What is the evidence from the book, from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the belief in the angels? Since we take it upon ourselves that matters of Aqeedah, anything matters of the religion, Aqeedah cannot be Aqeedah, cannot be a matter of creed and belief unless it's in the Quran or in the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So what is the evidence of this? And again, it's always good to train ourselves. It's a matter of upbringing, that we always get used to this, that we're seeking the evidence, so that we're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ala basira, on the clear way, not just blindly following. And the issue of matters of Aqeedah especially, the ulama, they talked, is it permissible for a Muslim to blindly follow in matters of belief, matters of Aqeedah? They say no, you cannot blindly follow someone in matters of belief. You have to believe, you have to know what you're believing in. You cannot say, my belief is like so and so, and you don't know what so and so is believing in. So, and why, and so on. So we have to believe in whatever we believe in, based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, with the sayings, of course, of the people of Moses. There are many evidences in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that talks about angels. Many verses, many ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and these ahadith and these ayat talks about many of the characteristics of the angels that we need to believe in, with different aspects. One of which he mentioned the ayah in Surah Al-Shura, verse number 5, وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ وَيَسْتَغْفِرُونَ لِمَن فِي الْأَرْضِ. That the angels and malaika يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ. يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ is like when you say سبحان الله وبحمده. Both the tasbih and the tahmid together, which is the most perfect means of praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in very simple way, because the tasbih states that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from all deficiencies. And the tahmid, when you say alhamdulillah, you state that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most perfect with all His names and attributes. So this is the perfect way of praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, denying all deficiencies and confirming all the perfect names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what the angels, they do constantly. They never bored or never stop whatsoever their worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And وَيَسْتَغْفِرُونَ لِمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, and they seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to those who are on earth. So they make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the believers, as it's mentioned also in Surah Al-Zumar. He mentioned here also the ayah of Surah Al-A'raf 206, إن الذين عند ربك لا يستكبرون عن عبادته ويسبحونه وله يسجدون. That those who, with your Lord, meaning the angels, they are not arrogant when it comes to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they glorify the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they prostrate to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned those who are enemies to the angels. As it's mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 98, مَنْ كَانَ عَدُوًّا لِلَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَجِبْرِيلَ وَمِيكَالَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَدُوٌّ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. Those who are enemies to Allah and His angels and the messengers and Jibreel and Mikael. And Mikael, another recitation, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَدُوٌّ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the enemy to the disbelievers. And this verse was revealed because the Jews, when they said to the Prophet or to the believers that Jibreel is their enemy. They said that Jibreel is their enemy. And Jibreel is the best of all angels. And many verses in the Quran. And he mentioned also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them from nur, from light. And this is in the authentic hadith that reported by Imam Muslim. That the Prophet said that the angels are created from light, and the human beings were created from mud, and the shaitan or the shayateen or the jinn have been created from fire. What is the meaning of to believe in the angels? What does that mean? As he says, ما معنى الإيمان بالملائكة? He says, الإقرار الجازم بوجودهم. To believe firmly that they exist, وأنهم خلق من خلق الله, and they are one of the creation of Allah. The creation of Allah. And we talked about it before. There is the creator and there is the creation. What is for the creation is not for the creator. The creator cannot be creation, and the creation cannot be the creator. So the creator, الرب, as Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he said, الرب رب من كل وجه والعبد عبد من كل وجه فلا الرب عبد والعبد رب. Which means the Rabb is the Lord from all ways and forms. And the Abd is Abd, slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from all ways and forms. So the Rabb cannot be the Abd, and the Abd cannot be the Rabb. It sounds very clear and obvious, right? But to some in their actions, they don't have this distinction. When they would refer to the Abd, with some of the attributes that it's only to the Rabb, there is a mixed or a gray area to some of the people between the rububiyyah and the ubudiyyah, between what's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the creation of Allah. It's supposed to be something very clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one to be worshipped. And the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of them are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when some people, they would worship other than Allah, they would worship a creation of Allah. So they gave to the creation what's supposed to be done to the creator of the heavens and earth. When the hearts are attached to the creation, when they seek help from the creation, when they call them besides Allah, when they slaughter for them, when they fear them, when they hope for the rewards from them, all these types of acts of worship, it's only to be done to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Why? Because they didn't get this straight from the beginning, that the Rabb is Rabb and the Abd is Abd. So these precise wordings are very important, right? That we constantly say and believe in, that we raise our children to constantly believe in and say it, so that they don't fall into the traps of shaitan. Thinking the human beings, if they praise someone because they love him so much, a human being, they would tend to go extremes in this, and they would fall into praising them in a way that becomes in the matters of the rububiyyah, or worshipping him besides Allah. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ himself, alayhi salatu wasalam, the best man ever walked on the face of the earth, he said, لا تطروني كما أطرت النصارى النمر إنما أنا عبد الله ورسوله. That do not be extreme in praising me like the Christians praised Isa, the son of Mary. What happened to them? They worshipped him besides Allah. So this is what is forbidden. Not that we should not praise the Prophet ﷺ. We should praise the Prophet ﷺ. But the extreme praising that would make the Prophet ﷺ to the Muslims, like Jesus to the Christians, for example, this is matters of kufr. So this is not saying something in a deficient way about the Prophet ﷺ when he says he's a human being and a messenger of Allah. If we say that the Prophet ﷺ is Abdullah wa Rasuluh, this is the best quality that a human being can reach. So he was a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone that is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say this, we're praising the Prophet ﷺ. When we say that he was the most in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he was having this ubudiyyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the most perfect way, the most humble to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But people, to their things that they know in this world, because of their deficiency and their ignorance, to them maybe this is a deficient attribute or something like that. But if for those who understand the purpose of their life, they would get the matter straight. So to believe in their existence and that they are creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, marbubuna musakharun. They are marbubun, meaning that they're under the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are created by Allah. They are sustained and provided for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they have no will whatsoever. They are basically subjected, entrusted with some of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entrusted them with. And he mentioned the verse in Surah Al-Anbiya, عِبَادٌ مُكْرَمُونَ لَا يَسْبِقُونَهُ بِالْقَوْلِ وَهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِ يَعْمَلُونَ. They are honored creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't go forward by any speech or action before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they, by the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they act. لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. They do not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not in them whatsoever. There is no such a thing as a sin for them, because they are not given this ability to listen and obey or not, which is the amana that was presented to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, and the human being are the one that took this amana, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the end of Surah Al-Ahzab. إِنَّ عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. The human being is the one that bore this amana. He is too much dhulm and he is too much ignorance. Because this amana, this trust, that you would have the ability to make a decision whether to obey Allah or not, and as a result of that, hellfire or the Jannah, right? The heavens and the earth and the mountains, they said we cannot take this. So the human beings are the ones that will be subjected to this, which is a heavy amana, it's a heavy trust. And it's easy for those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for them, because they worship the most merciful subhanahu wa ta'ala. They never get tired from the ibadah. They're constantly in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as it's mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya. لا يستكبرون عن عبادتي ولا يستحسرون يسبحون الليل والنهار لا يفترون. They worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night. They never bored, they never give up. So this is some of the characteristics of the angels. Then the next question, or the last question in the talk about the angels, اذكر بعض أنواعهم باعتبار ما هيأهم الله له ووكلهم به. Mention some other types with regards to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them different with regards to the job that they have been entrusted to do. So after we talk about this, we basically can summarize the points that we need to know about the angels, to believe, to get the matter of creed or matter of belief clear. So when you're asked, when you think about belief in the angels, we have things in 5 points, right? And again, as we said, also matters of Aqeedah, it's good to have it in a comprehensive way, that if you're asked, for example, what is your Aqeedah? Like this, you'll be able to say your Aqeedah from the beginning to the end, right? So it's a good thing to even memorize it. How do we believe, or what do we believe in the angels? We believe that they are khalqun azim, they are creation of Allah, and they are huge creation of Allah, right? And the hadith that talks about this, like when the Prophet ﷺ saw Jibreel alayhi salam in his original form, in which his head was in the midst of the skies, and he had 500 wings, right? And as it was mentioned also in the hadith, where when Jibreel alayhi salam was sent to destroy the villages of the people of Lut, that he lifted the villages, 4 villages it was said, with maqadam al-janah, the tip of one of his wings, which is the tip of the wing of a bird, for example, right? It's the weakest part of the wing. Usually the middle of it is very thick, and the tip you would find it very weak. So with the tip of his wing, one of his wings, he lifted these 4 villages, and it was lifted all the way to the skies, to the extent of which that the angels, they heard the barking of the dogs. And then it was flipped upside down, and it was made to fall. Right? This was the punishment of the people of Lut because of their actions. So the power of the angels is something, of course, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is what we know of power of the creation of Allah. So they are very powerful creation of Allah. And by the way, each and everything of these points have an effect in our life. This has to have an effect on our Iman and our actions. Because if this is one of the creation of Allah, and when we hear about the jobs of the angels, and one of which the angels, those who write everything that we say and we do and so on and so forth, why would a person fear a very weak human being that can never do anything for his own self? People would disbelieve, people would commit sins, people would live life of ignorance just because of the fear of some they cannot even benefit their own selves, right? When we know about these powerful creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we would witness that we are in a test, we're living a test, whether we would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, or whether we will be lost in these fears and these hopes and these long hopes that people have in this world that ends by one's death. And you see the mercy of Allah that the matter is so clear. It's supposed to be. If we use what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us as human beings, which is unique from the creation of Allah, that we have this ability to think and to make decisions of what's coming ahead. So as a result of that, we should not follow the desires like the animals do. You see something, you like it, you go after it. This is what dogs and cats and things like this, they do this. But the human being is different. He has desires too, but he has the ability to think and to make a decision, and he would see that, yes, this is a desire, but I would be patient because of what's coming ahead. And people do this for their worldly gain even. They work so hard even so that after they retire, they would go around the world for a tour, for example. Right? This is something that people do. And if somebody sees them while they are suffering or patient, or they say, why they're wasting their life like this? But they are thinking ahead. And they say, and because of this ability, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the revelation accordingly. So people have to use this. So when we see the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we witness the power of the creation of Allah, that will bring to us to put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the first point. The second point is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them from light, from nur. The second question, which is, they have jobs that they are entrusted to do. So angel for a certain job, another angel for a certain job, and so on, as we would see inshallah ta'ala. And one of the things is that yatakayafun, that means they become in shapes that you can see with your own eyes, like in the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, when he came in the form of a man to the Prophet ﷺ, and the companions of the anhum, they saw him. And he sat next to the Prophet ﷺ, and he asked him the three questions: what is Islam, what is Iman, what is Ihsan? The famous hadith of Jibreel. So, and the Prophet ﷺ at the end, he said, this is Jibreel atakum yu'allimukum dinakum, that Jibreel came to teach you your religion, right? And the fifth point is that we believe in them, as the ulama, they say, ijmalan wa tafsilan, which means we believe in them in general like this. We believe in the angels. And this is a pillar of Iman. No person would have the proper Iman unless he believes in the angels. This is in general. And then in specifics, anytime you hear about an angel in the Quran or in the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we believe in that angel and that angel and so on. So in specific and in general. So here what some other types. He says, هم باعتبار ذلك أقسام كثيرة. There are different types, many types. منهم الموكل بأداء الوحي إلى الرسل وهو الروح الأمين جبريل عليه السلام. From them is the one that is responsible for the wahy, for the revelation of Allah, to reveal the books, to come down with the revelation from Allah to the messengers. And that is the best of all the angels, which is Jibreel alayhi salam. This is his only job. After the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, there is no more wahy, there is no more revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the job of Jibreel alayhi salam. وَمِنْهُمْ الْمُوَكَّلُ بِالْقِطْرِ, the one that is responsible for the rain. And that is Mikail alayhi salam. Mikail. And this is mentioned in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And from among them, those who is responsible with the sur, which is it correct to say the trumpet, right? In which he would blow in it for the establishment of the Day of Judgment. And this is also mentioned in the Quran. There is one for all the creation of Allah, for those who are alive to die, and then another one for them to be resurrected. And this is Israfil alayhi salam. This is Israfil. And he himself does not know when. And as the Prophet ﷺ said in the authentic hadith, that he iltaqam as-sur, that means he took the thing in his hand, right? And he is looking with his eyes to the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, waiting for the order to come. right? So this is إسرافيل عليه السلام. ومنهم الموكل بقبض الأرواح, and from among them the one that is responsible for taking the souls of the human being, death. That is ملك الموت وأعوانه, the angel of death and his helpers. He's not the only one. There are angels and they help the angel of death. And this is mentioned in the long hadith where the Prophet ﷺ that when the Prophet ﷺ said when death befalls the believers and the disbelievers. The point or the part in the hadith is when the angel of death comes by his head, and the angels would sit on both sides of him as far as his eyesight can see. If this is the angels of mercy or the angels of punishment. And then he will order for the soul to come out, meaning the angel of death. And if it's for the believer, it comes out so easy, as the Prophet ﷺ said, like the drop of water when it comes from the bottle of water. How easy it comes out. This is the same way. And once it comes out, the angels of mercy, they have coffins from Jannah and musk from Jannah. And once it comes out, they don't leave it with the angel of death. They take it away from him right away, and they wrap it in these coffins of Jannah, and then they ascend with the soul to the heavens, and then it comes back to his grave for him to be questioned. And it's a long hadith. And for the disbelievers, it's the opposite of that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. So this is when it comes to the angel of death, Malakul Maut. And it's not a matter of a scary thing. This is the reality of this life, that all of us shall taste this moment, which we do not know exactly when. It can be any time. And that's why it's amazing also when we would enjoy the long hope of this world. It's not to make our life miserable, but at the same time we need to live the reality of this life, not to be deceived. So always a person is being prepared for the last moment of his life, so that the bishara and the glad tidings are given, this moment that all of us fear and all of us don't like this moment whatsoever. But for the believers, once this moment comes and they are giving the glad tidings from the angels that they are from the people of Jannah, then this is the most joy that they would ever experienced. And because of that, they don't want to go back to the dunya anymore whatsoever. They want to go on and see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had prepared for them. And you can ponder over the meaning that the Prophet ﷺ, when he said when the believers dies, they go to the mercy of Allah. What is more beautiful than this? Right? They are transformed to the mercy of Allah. And who would ever want to go to anywhere else after they are to the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So what would make this moment not a sad one, right? Not a scary one, is the deeds and the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which does not bring misery even if a person is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life. It does not bring misery, it brings even all means of joy. And for when the person to be steadfast, people are scared of it when they are alive, but for the dead person, for the one that is dying, experiencing it, the believers, this is the moment of joy for them. So this is with regarding to Malakul Maut. And he says, وَمِنْهُمْ وَكَّلْ بِأَعْمَالِ الْعِبَادِ. Malakul Maut, by the way, he does not have a name. It's called Malakul Maut. Right? Some people think it's Azrael and things like this. There's no authentic hadith that say that his name is Azrael. Right? His name is Malakul Maut, the angel of death. And the angels, those who are responsible for the A'malul Ibad. وَهُمُ الْكِرَامُ الْكَاتِبُونَ. Those who write everything. Right? مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. There is no word that he utters unless there is رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. 2 angels are writing. That's why with every person there are 4 angels. For every human being there are 4 angels for him only. 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening. 2 from Fajr to Asr. And 2 from Asr to Fajr. Right? ملائكة يتعاقبون عليكم بالليل والنهار, as the Prophet ﷺ said. They take shifts on you every day and night. And they come, and the hadith says that when they come on the angels of the morning, they come at Fajr. And the angel of night also are there for Fajr. This is the time where they change the shift, right? and and then at Asr time the same way, and they would go ascend, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would ask them, and they would say, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but this is a way to make them witness for or against. And then they would say, we found them praying and we left them when they're praying. So the beginning of the deed of the shift, the person is making salah, if he prays Fajr in the Jama'ah, and also he's getting the same when he prays the Asr in Jama'ah. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, there's a hadith that talks about Fajr and Asr together. Man salla al-bardayn dakhala al-jannah. Whoever prays the two bardayn, right, the Fajr and Asr, he would enter Jannah. And also the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that in Sahih Muslim, that إنكم سترون ربكم عيانا كما ترون القمر لا تضمون في رؤيته, that you would see your Lord clearly with your eyes in the day of judgment, right? The same way that you see the moon, meaning without no difficulties. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, فإن استطعتم على ألا تغلبوا على صلاة قبل طلوع الشمس وقبل غروبها فافعلوا. Then, knowing this as a fact, then every believer, they want to be in this level. What is the price? What is the way to get to this? He said, and then if you are able, that you are never defeated, and see the wordings is very precise, that you are never defeated for a salah before sunrise and the salah before sunset, then do so. Explanation of the hadith, Imam al-Khattabi, he said in Jama'ah, that the Fajr and Asr, you're always in struggle with yourself and the shaitan. Right? So the hadith is, defeat him every time. Don't be ever defeated by the shaitan when it comes to Fajr and Asr. Pray them in Jama'ah, right? So that you would see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day of judgment. And we see the importance of Fajr and Asr. This is where the angels, they write the beginning at the end. And if you have the beginning is good, then the end is good. What's in between, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can be easily forgiven. And that's why always the beginning of the deed and the end of the deed is very important. And also what's in between. So this is Al-Kiram Al-Katibun. And we see the effect of this, the word that we say. Somebody's writing, right? And how many words we say. That's why words are actions. And it's something that a person would see in the day of judgment. And a word that is for the punishment of Allah, or something that angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person would say it without paying attention to it, will take him 70 years in the hellfire. And the opposite, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with the word that a person say. So that means we have to think before we say anything, because the angels, they write. And there is the debate between the ulama. Do the angels write everything, or only the good deeds or the bad deeds? Right? In one sense, when we think about this, most of the words is either we have to look into what we say based on, is it going to be in the good deeds or the bad deeds? Even if you say to someone, how are you? Right? You say that to be kind to a Muslim, to do something, even to make a da'wah to someone, right? And this will be in the good deed, right? And always we should ask ourselves this question, this action, this thing that I would say, is it going to be my balance of good deed or balance of the bad deeds? Because everything is preserved, and a person will be held accountable for all of this. And منهم الموكل بحفظ العبد من بين يديه ومن خلفه هم المعقبات. Some of them, they are responsible for protection for the slave of Allah, from between his hands and from behind him, and this is mentioned in the Quran. And they are the mu'aqqibat, which means they are always in this, protecting the human beings till the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, that this is the last thing in their life, then their protection is lifted from the human beings. That's why you would find sometimes a person would say, I have no idea how I was saved from this. Or you see an accident, for example, and you'd say that has to be everybody in this car, for example, they have to be all dead. But it's not time for some of them yet. So they will be saved. So the angels, they save, and they save the believers, and they help the believers, and so on. له معقبات من بين يديه ومن خلفه يحفظونه من أمر الله. This is what the ayah says. They protect them from the things that happens to them. ومنهم الموكل بالجنة ونعيمها وهم رضوان ومن معه. And there is the one that is responsible for the Jannah, right? The keeper of Jannah, Ridwan, and who with him, and the one responsible for the hellfire and its punishment, and he is Malik, and the ones with him from the Zabaniya, from the keepers of the hellfire. وَرُؤَسَاؤُهُمْ 19, and there are 19 of them, as it's mentioned in the Quran. ومنهم موكل بفتنة القبر وهم منكر ونكير. That the fitna of the grave, the two angels that would make the person after he is buried and people leave, they come to him, two angels, Munkar and Nakir, and they ask him, well, who is your Lord? What is your religion? Who is the man that was sent among you? So the believers would say, Rabbi Allah, and my religion is Islam, and the Prophet is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and then after that will be made easy for him. So these are the angels. And the fitna of the qabr, as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, it's close or the same like the fitna of the Dajjal, which is the biggest fitna that will be on the face of earth, which means there is no running away from being tested, which is in a sense that can be bad news or good news, right? Meaning that if a person is living at times of ease and he would see others are being tested, right? And he would be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he is not being tested, which is definitely a good thing. A person should always be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he is not being tested like this. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he ordered us to do that. لا تتمنوا لقاء العدو. Do not wish to meet the enemies. Do not wish to put yourself in a trial situation, right? If you are safe, alhamdulillah, not to be coward or not to compromise your deen, of course not. But always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for matters of goodness. But that doesn't mean that those who are saved in the good sense, meaning the test, not the fitna that would be in the negative meaning, it doesn't mean that they will be like this forever. If it's not in this dunya, right, it's in the grave. And in the grave, it's the same or close to the fitna of the Dajjal, which is the biggest fitna ever on the face of earth. And that's why, for example, those who are martyred, they're saved from the questioning in the grave. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, كَفَى بِبَرِقَةِ السُّيُوفِ فِتْنَةً. It is enough for them, the shining of the sword in front of the eyes. This was enough fitna for them, right? When they face this, and they will still be steadfast. So when a person is steadfast facing the calamities and things like this is by itself, he passed the test, right? But anybody would face the fitna in the grave. That means there's no way out of being tested. This is the nature of the human being. So a person being forgetful, running away from these feelings because it makes him maybe worried or something like this, it won't get him anywhere. He would just meet it anyway. So instead of being forgetful, being heedless about it, is that the person will take the matter seriously. And this is the only way that would bring the real happiness in this life and in the hereafter. Not when a person is intoxicated. That's why people intoxicate themselves, so that they forget. But it doesn't take them anyway. So this is fitnat al-qabr. وَمِنْهُمْ حَمَلَةُ الْعَرْشِ. And from them, those who carry the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And الموكل بالنطف في الأرحام, the one that, the many of them, those who are responsible for when the person is in the womb of his mother, and writing whether he is among those who will be happy or those who are in loss, and the angels, those who enter the Bayt al-Ma'mur, which is on top of the Kaaba by the seven heavens, where as he says, يدخله كل يوم, and this is in the hadith, 70,000 ملك ثم لا يعودون إليه. They every day 70,000 of the angels, they go into it and they don't go back to it again. Right? This is how huge they are in number, and they are in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the same way those people are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the Kaaba. And the malaika, those who are sayyahun, يتبعون مجالس الذكر, those who go around looking for the dhikr gatherings. And when we say majalis al-dhikr, somebody might think that means we sit collectively, make dhikr, gatherings of dhikr. That's what the hadith says. But we can make our own majalis of al-dhikr. But who is the one that had the majalis al-dhikr that we need to follow? Is the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, right? So what was the majalis of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What was the gatherings in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would sit with his companions and do what? Did the Prophet ﷺ and his companions sit together and they start chanting and saying dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There is not even one narration that says that they did something like this. But what did the Prophet ﷺ do? If they're not making salah, right? The Prophet ﷺ is teaching them, and they are listening and they're learning. So this is majalis al-dhikr. When a person is sitting in the gatherings where the name of Allah is mentioned, the name of the Prophet ﷺ is mentioned, teaching matters of the deen, Quran is being recited, a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. This is majalis al-dhikr, that the angels, they look for them all over the earth. And this is the job of some of the angels. This is their only job, that they go for these majalis and they sit on top of each other till they reach the heavens like this, because of the blessings of these things. And that's why if the unseen is lifted and people can see things in this life, of course our life will be totally different. But that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us with matters of unseen. And that's why we have the wahy to inform us of what's in the unseen, so that people would go after it and will be in these majalis. And this is the benefit of getting to know the angels. How would a person be satisfied or be okay with him that he live in an environment or in a place where there is no majalis for the dhikr? He is deprived. When it's not daily, right, at least once a week, twice a week, that a person would go and sit and listen about something matters of the deen, the durus of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And also, some of them, they are in rows, lined up in ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet ﷺ said to the people, he would say to them when he is straightening the rows in the salah, أَلَا تَصُفُّونَ كَمَا تَصُفِّ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, shouldn't you make your rows straight like the angels do? The angels, they do the same thing. Right? So there is many of the ibadat that we do, the angels are doing the like of it. Right? So they do this also. And they are just in matters of worship. They are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And among them, others that we have no idea of what they do and what's their jobs and things like this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he says, mentioned the verse in the Quran, Surah Al-Muddathir, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُ وَمَا هِيَ إِلَّا ذِكْرَ الْبَشَرِ, that no one knows the soldiers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are many of the evidences in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. One of which, for example, the hadith of the angels, where when a person comes to the masjid and he sits and he waits for the salah, the angels would say, "Oh Allah, forgive him, oh Allah, accept his repentance, oh Allah, have mercy on him, as long as he does not break his wudu and as long as he does not cause harm to others." So this is dua from the angels, which is another act of worship, that a job that a Muslim should always look for. Look for the hadith or the ayat in the Quran that talks about angels making dua. Angels are sinless, right? They don't make sins. Why the human beings, the dua is not accepted? Why? Or some of them is because of their sins. So when the angels, they don't have sins, so their dua is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if the hadith says that if you come and you wait for the salah, right, the angels, they make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you, the dua is accepted, right? And the angels, they ask forgiveness for the believers and so on. So it's definitely a good thing to see these deeds where the angels are making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the believers, so the person will be within or doing these acts of worship. This is the last thing that he mentioned with the matters of the believing in the angels. But we would see clearly matters of Aqeedah has to be clear, and also the effect of that in our life when it comes to putting our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also that your ibadah, that you think that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you find yourself liking yourself so much. I'm better than so many people. I'm making this and I'm reciting this. The angels, they don't give up on matters of ibadah. They're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night. And our ibadah is nothing. It's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gives this great reward for these simple deeds. That's by the mercy of Allah. And by the rulings of Islam. Some people, they look into the salah and haram and halal as burden, so many different things, so many things to be done. They look into the deen as so many obligations and so on. For the believers, when they see this, they see it as this is so leniency, the lenient way of life whatsoever, right? That we're not ordered to pray 50 times a day, we're not ordered to do we're ordered to do the things that are very easy and simple, with the huge rewards, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that if people would worship Him day and night, they would not fulfill the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that would bring more of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hearts. They don't give up on matters of ibadah. They're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night. And our ibadah is nothing. It's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gives this great reward for these simple deeds. That's by the mercy of Allah. And by the rulings of Islam. Some people, they look into the salah and haram and halal as burden, so many different things, so many things to be done. They look into the deen as so many obligations and so on. for the believers, when they see this, they see it as this is so leniency, the lenient way of life whatsoever, right? That we're not ordered to pray 50 times a day, we're not ordered to do we're ordered to do the things that are very easy and simple, with the huge rewards, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that if people would worship Him day and night, they would not fulfill the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that would bring more of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hearts and humble the person. Make him look at himself as someone that is in need of the mercy of Allah and for the acceptance of the deeds. وصلى الله وسلم على محمد.